everyone, my name is Anne Bedrick. I'm an abstract artist and I'm coming to you from my studio in Cathedral City, and I'm going to teach you a little bit today about abstract painting. Okay, so let's start by talking about what materials you're going to need. I suggest that you buy some canvas boards. These are the 12-inch size. You can go bigger or smaller, but this is a good basic size to start with. And I suggest having a few out so you can switch between canvases when they're wet. You'll need a variety of brushes. So I've got very small ones, a couple medium-sized ones, and these are all round. And then I've got some flat ones as well, and this one is a big one from the hardware store. You'll want to protect your work area somehow with like a plastic tablecloth or something, unless you have a dedicated studio area. I suggest having either a pencil or some compressed charcoal to activate your board first, so it doesn't feel so scary when it's plain white. And then later it's also really nice to add in with oil pastels. You'll see how I'll use those. The paints that I suggest are, you can just buy those little sets at like a Michael's or something. But if you're going to buy individual colors, some different ones you might want to try are these from Blick are really nice. This brand from Golden, these have a lot of pigment in them. Or the acrylic Liquitex has heavy body pigment in it as well. One thing I do suggest, if you buy one of the little sets, is also buy another white paint, like a large white paint, because you'll go through a lot more white. You'll need some kind of a bucket for rinsing your brushes. I'm just using an old vase because that's nice and stable and it holds a nice amount of water. A spray bottle is fun to have because you can get different effects with a spray bottle, and I'll be showing you that as well. And I like to wear gloves because some of the pigments, particularly the cadmiums, aren't so good for you to absorb through your skin, so this keeps me safe. And then for mixing your paints, you can use something like a scrap piece of paper, or if you want to get fancier, you can get a Stay Wet palette. And what that is it has palette paper that's layered on top of like a sponge. And so it helps to keep your paints wet for longer, especially living here in the desert. And then if you're going to be mixing up bigger quantities of paint for bigger paintings, these containers are really good. You could even get the half sizes of them. I just have the bigger size. This will keep my paint wet for weeks, maybe even. And then you'll also need some paper towels. So those are the supplies you're going to need. And you'll also want to wear some kind of a smock to protect your clothes, or wear old clothing. Acrylic paint, once it dries, will be permanent. Okay, so for getting started, some people like to journal on their boards, kind of write about what you're feeling today. That will give you a place to start from emotionally with your abstract painting. And painting abstractly is an emotional experience. It is about the process, not about the product, in the same way that meditating is. You will find that you have that same sense of peacefulness at the end of it. So when you start by journaling, you're already accessing the feelings that you want to express through the paint. And your journaling will get covered, so it's just private for you. Another way to start is using compressed charcoal, which when you draw with it, it's very smudgy, and I think that's really beautiful. I just use I just use kind of the kids one. It's really a chalk pastel kind of charcoal, and it's very messy, but it does make these lovely smudges, and when you wet it, you can do different kinds of smudges as well. So just make some fun little scribbles. It almost doesn't even matter to get started. Give it some smudges. If you want to wet a bit of it, do that. This part is really, only purpose of this part is to help you feel like you've already started and there's nothing sacred that you are protecting in your piece. A plain white canvas feels like you're supposed to have a plan. Now I have something to react to instead. So I've put out some paint colors that I'd like to use, and I'll be mixing them. Particularly, one of the things that you'll find is that sometimes colors work really well together right out of the tube, and other times you'll need to mix them a little bit to get them to harmonize. One of the tricks is to take a little bit of one particular color and add it to all of them. So just a tiny bit, let's say, of this orange added to each of the colors will make them harmonize really well together. So one of the things about painting abstractly, I already told you that you want to be reacting from a place of feeling as opposed to thinking. It's also good to work like a kid, you know, without too much thought. Enjoy the motions that your paintbrush makes. Let yourself travel around. It doesn't really matter, because it's not about how the painting looks, it's about how you feel while you're doing it. So as I said, I'm going to just mix a little bit of this orange into every color. It's not much of a change, but it will help them all harmonize. I'm not looking to change from this beautiful blue, just to make sure they're all going to work well together. And when a paint is wet, you can see that it will mix together. And when it's dry, it will layer on top. I'm putting down this first layer a little bit on the thinner side so that it dries more quickly and I can move on. You can also see me spreading a color out around the canvas. So I'm making some large blue shapes, some small blue shapes, maybe a line, so that all of the shapes are different. I do that naturally because of years of experience. But later we'll talk more about the design of the piece. Right now, though, as I said, this part is about being a kid and having fun and not worrying too much. Washing my brush in between colors. I'm going to use some white as well. It's good to have 3 or 4 or 5 colors plus black and white, because black and white are going to give you variety within each of your colors. And I love when they start to blend a little bit as I'm using them because they're wet. Let's see what some of this orange does here. When you use your paintbrush, if you push hard, your colors are going to mix, and if you push lightly, they'll go on top of each other. So that's just something to think about as well. You can try playing with the way that you put it on. You can scrub it on, you can draw it on. At a certain point when I've been working for a little bit, I like to rotate my canvas so that my natural motion goes in a variety of directions. and also so I don't get too attached to any one direction. Remember, my goal here is to be enjoying the childlike playfulness at the beginning. Spread in. I love enjoying looking at the contrast between places where it picked up some of the charcoal or some of the other colors and where it goes on a little bit more purely. So that's one of the things that I'm playing with right now. This kind of painting often has many layers. So the first layer, really, a lot of it won't show in the end. It's nice to let the paints mix a little bit on your canvas so that you get a beautiful variety of colors. But you don't want to mix them so much that it all starts to look like mud. And drying my paintbrush in between layers as well. Another thing I really enjoy doing is spraying and letting drips happen. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. And I'll continue adding more paint. I'm going to rotate again. Oops. Alright, so let's see. Let me add a little of this beautiful mustard color. I think I'm going to lighten this mustard color up to a very pale one. And a little bit of that orange in it. It's really fun to play with mixing colors. Look at this gorgeous color. And let's make a nice large area of that. So already you can see what I was saying about you're going to find that some of your original work is just going to get covered up. Some people really like to have music on while they're working. Try to create different textures. And some of that can happen more naturally when music is on because you're kind of dancing to it as you work. Let's see, I think I want to bring my eye a little bit this way with that same color. So I think I'm going to take a little break and let this dry because I think it's pretty wet, and if I keep going, I'm going to end up getting too much muddiness. But before I do that, I do want to show you the oil pastels can be really lovely to draw with on top or even through. And you see how it broke through the paint there? So that's a nice thing to do while it's still wet. And then I'll show you later how it goes on when it's dry. And I'm drying it so that there's not a surface of paint on here and it'll still drop. Alright, so we're going to let that dry for a bit and then we'll come back and add some more to it. Okay, so my paint has had a chance to dry a bit and you can see more closely now how the pastel broke through the paint there as well as here. And also some lovely things that happened where I sprayed. It lightened the area where I sprayed in addition to creating the drips. And now I'm going to go through and create another layer brighten up some areas, subdue some others. One of the things about painting abstractly is you really want to stay present as you're working so that you can react to what is happening and enjoy what is happening. For instance, I love the parts I just pointed to you, but this edge right here I'm not liking so much, so I'm going to go back through that and see if I can't soften that a little. Let's see. Oh dear, I shouldn't have left this paintbrush sitting like that in the water. It got a little bit spread out. Let's see if I can help it. Take a different brush, let that one have a little bit of recuperation time. And I am going to make a new color using some of the orange and white. I think for fun, let's just add in some of this hot pink and see what that does. Oh, that's pretty. All right. So now that this is dry, when I lay on my paint, it just sits right on top. So that's one way to adjust an edge if you don't like it. Another way is, oops, I forgot to put my gloves on. Hold on. So another way to soften an edge is you can even just use your finger and spread some of the pigment. Okay. Promised I would show you how the pastel will react differently now that the paint is dry. So let me put my brush down for a minute and do that. Let's say I want to create some kind of a line here. So do you see how much brighter and crisper it is than where it went through wet pigment? I am still playing. This is absolutely playtime. It is time for my brain to relax, to enjoy the process, to notice the beautiful color transitions that are happening, to create variations within my paint colors. And like here, that wasn't planned, but I like what it did, so I'm going to leave it and let it dry. So at the beginning, you lay down pigment, you don't really care what you put where. But when you go back for the second layer, now's the time to start editing it a bit more and thinking about places that you love, trying to not change them, but at the same time not being precious about them. If something happens to cover a spot that you love, don't worry about it. You can make a new spot you love. I also want to look for simplifying my composition. I tend to get a little bit busy at times, so I'm looking for ways that I can make one kind of bigger area of a color. Laying on the paint sometimes a little bit with a dry brush will create a different texture even within the same color. But do you see how this all kind of became one area now? Alright, so another thing that I notice is I need more darks. One of the biggest mistakes that new painters will make is they won't have enough contrast. If you took a photo of this and turned it black and white, you could see that this white is really bright and this black is really dark and everything else is kind of a mid-tone gray. So I need to pump up some of my darks and some of my lights to create more interest and to help my eye travel around my painting. And I keep talking about traveling around your painting. There's a rule called the rule of 3, that if there's 2 shapes of a same color, your eye will ping pong back and forth between them. But if there is a third one, it will help your eye travel more completely around. So I've already gotten my eye to go here. How can I get it to come over here? Well, let's just create a little bit of color, of that black color over here, and now all of a sudden my eye has 3 places to travel. And each color tells its own story. And I try to create a story that has variation. So a round black shape, a long skinny black shape, and kind of an ambiguous black shape all work together to make it a more interesting story. And then there's the color red. If I look at the reds, my eye can travel. There's more of those, so my eye will travel amongst more of them. But even in that area, I feel like I want to create a little bit more variety. And at this point, I might want to switch down to a smaller brush because this one's starting to feel too big. So I'm going to take this teeny little one that I have, and sometimes I might crisp an edge, sometimes I might draw a shape, and if you hold your brush kind of uncomfortably at the end, you're going to get some really interesting organic lines that you maybe wouldn't create if you were holding it like a pencil. And I love to create some of those. I'm creating a blend using my water. So I'm always looking to create variations within colors so that when you look closely at a painting, there's as much to enjoy as when you look at it from far away. Really liking how that greenish color is reading there, so let's see what I can do with that. Let's see if I brighten it. And I'm going right over the line I created with the pastel. Still read it going through the whole thing, even when part of it is covered. I like how that pop of color is so much brighter than it was now. Not every shape needs to be filled. I enjoy that as well. There's that space between the blue line and the blue form. Oh, if you start to get too attached to it, it is time to turn it. To me, a really good abstract painting has many layers, and you can see through to what came before. Well, sometimes that happens with creating little dots or patterns or going over a line. But you can see right back through to this original charcoal in some of the places, and that's very interesting. I don't really like what I just did here, this one that came a little too big, so I'll erase it. If you do it soon enough, it can come right off. Ooh, and I like it better without it anyway. All right, well, I'm going to stop here. You go enjoy playing and seeing what you create. If you ever start feeling too precious about what's happening on this canvas, you remember to always rotate it or start another one. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Have a great day. And I would love to hear from you. Send me an email with an image of what you created and how it made you feel while you were doing it. Please remember it's about the process and not the product. We don't really care if you made a beautiful piece today as long as you enjoyed making it. And as with anything else, the more that you do it, the better you'll get. So try having a practice of painting every day or 3 times a week. And you'll be surprised within a year, your skill level will be hugely improved and you'll be so proud of what you can make. Abstract art has the unique ability to meet you where you are on any given day and allow you to get lost within it. My gallery, Anne Bedrick Fine Art, is open Wednesdays to Saturdays from 11 to 3. I hope you'll stop by and see some of my work, maybe get some inspiration for your own. And if you prefer not to go out, visit my website at annebedrick.com.